Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Tusk event, in which the Narwhale is added to the game. So this week, unfortunately, we do not have the faction event happening this weekend. It looks like it ended up getting replaced with the raid event. However, we still will end up having a 20-star Blackhawk coming in this week, as well as a few other things. So let's get into all of that. So as far as the troop itself, it is a bit underwhelming. You can stock up on blue-purple if you want. It might be okay in arena, though will not be used much outside of that context. It ends up destroying a column, so you do get the mana accumulation for it, and then deals some true damage to the last enemy as well as Submerge itself. Overall, pretty average troop. It is a rare after all, so obviously pretty average. It does have a blue link to kind of synergize a little bit into itself. It also has this newer trait that we currently only have on Brian the Clucky, in which he has a 10% chance to do a Wish Gem whenever its turn begins. One interesting synergy that it does have as well is the capability of destroying that Wish Gem, unlike Brian the Clucky. This does have the capability of actually doing the destroy to activate the Wish Gem itself. So you could end up getting a 10%, end up casting this, and end up getting some value from it. So in that regard, it is theoretically the most viable thing that can create Wish Gems at this current moment in time. Of course, that will change, but if you still want to mess with it, I guess this is technically the best way to do so, at least for this week until we get a better option into the future, because there definitely will be a better option at some point pretty soon. As far as the event key drop table, it's a bit of a mix this week. Some decent stuff. If nothing else, the most noteworthy thing about the drop table is Blackhawk officially is 20-starable as of this week. So if you have literally everything from the kingdom, you can get 20 stars. This will end up giving you additional attacks, specifically two. One for the 10, to get into level 10, and then the other for level 20. And there are multiple different ways between the event key drop table and Soulforge to end up getting some of those troops this week. As far as the troops that are available, we can end up seeing them if we go over to Blackhawk and click show all. As far as what is available, every single thing that you see here except for the 4 troops from the Blackheart faction are all available specifically in the event key drop table. As far as picks that you definitely want to make sure you get, you probably don't want to leave this week without having Captain Macaw. He ends up giving all rogues a 50% mana start. This is very useful for a few really specific teams, most noteworthy being that you can end up doing it with Mother of Darkness, which is in Soulforge this week, by the way. So some really good synergy in that regard. It's also used for a few other rogue teams. Pretty much, if you're using rogues to any capacity, Captain Macaw has to be in your team. So he's probably the highest priority, and I would advise using event keys this week until you at least get this legend if you don't already have them. He also has the capability of insta-killing submerged teams, and while pure submerged teams, or builds that go completely around submerge, are relatively rare, there are some hero classes that will occasionally mass submerge a team, and a few other mechanics here and there that might end up submerging the enemy, and this will be able to insta-kill them, assuming they don't have stealthy. He can also end up placing a submerge himself, however, this will require him to cast twice, and you generally only want to be really casting him as the finishing move, either to poke kill or to end up targeting specifically on submerged enemies. Aside from that, there's a few like utility troops here and there that you end up getting at lower rarities, like Scurvy Sea Dogs used occasionally for his empowered gold gain while having a convert into mana accumulation, and a few other things. Skyla is used for its skull spam on its Bone Storm, very situational, but it can be used for some particular teams. The 2 mythics that you get here are both great utility troops. I don't feel like I personally use either that often, but they are required for 10-star and 20-star for those 2 attack bonuses, as well as actually being somewhat useful. So the main gimmick with Megavore is he's currently the only troop in the entire game that can 4 times armor break the enemy team. This can be pretty good if you are using a really heavy physical damage team or skull spam team in order to whittle down their armor to absolutely nothing. There is also tends to be able to get one shot, so in PvP-like situations what you can end up doing is killing out a enemy, and then the other 3 have none of their armor, so you can kill them quickly. It's also occasionally used against some higher level content, and actually back in the day before Iron Gut was added, basically for a few months before Iron Gut came into the game, this was actually the meta for doing delves, and is still somewhat decent at doing delves. Delves. There are better options these days, like Iron Guff among a few others. However, it is still a option if you happen to not have that many options. So if you're a new player and happen to be able to get your hands on this from some luck off of event keys this week, you're pretty much going to be good to go until you get like a slightly better option for Delves. But he's perfectly fine for running through the entirety of Delves all the way to 500 if you so choose, due to his percent chance. The only problem with this is it can be a little bit luck based, but does overall have a pretty good setup. Impervious, insta-kill, 4 times armor tier is the only thing that could do it, while also sometimes getting an insta-kill off its true damage, so has some potential. The other one is Sacrax. This is also in Soulforge this week, so you have 2 different ways of getting it, either event keys or through Soulforge. If you're only missing Sacrax, you probably want to get him from Soulforge. However, if you're missing both of them, you definitely want to potentially attempt it through event keys. Overall, I do not advise really prioritizing mana accumulating mythics compared to damage related ones, as there are a lot more lower rarity things that can mana accumulate, whereas not as many low rarity things can do a lot of damage. So you normally want to prioritize the mythics that do a lot of damage more so. However, he is a pretty decent mana accumulation option. Don't personally feel like I use him too often. However, he is used in a few infinite loop teams and is sometimes used in some various events and can be a really good mana accumulating option, as well as for the current event if you want to end up utilizing it for that. But overall, it's an okay event key drop table week. Most highest priority is definitely make sure you can secure yourself a Captain Macaw. Aside from that, it really just depends on if you're trying to upgrade the kingdom or if you're really interested in one of the mythics from the kingdom itself. Okay, so next order of business, we have 2 different events. We finally have Guild Wars again. Supposedly they have fixed Guild Wars. We'll find out tomorrow if they have or have not. But we can assume that they have. Don't forget to set your defend teams. It seemed to have defaulted everything to just a random team, so definitely make sure to go reset all of your teams. Don't forget to do that, as you won't be able to change the first one once the first day happens. So definitely make sure to go and set those. But of course, Guild Wars plays out the same as always does, and we'll be going over them every single night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we do every single night on the channel, and just kind of messing around with them and see what we can do. Probably the most interesting thing about Guild Wars this week, and I'm kind of curious to see how it pans out, is this is the first time that the triple damage Christmas troop that we end up getting during the holidays can be used during a Guild Wars. So curious to see how that ends up panning out. There's a few other options too, but that's probably the most noteworthy one. That, and I think we got some like more wild card options, so none of the wild card stuff was too good other than Centurion, but I believe Centurion was already available for the previous Guild War, if I'm not mistaken. Only a few of the other wild card options like the Mythic and such, I believe, came in at a later time. Anyways, aside from that, we do have a second guild-related event this week. Of course, the World event with the little Narwhale. As far as the event is concerned, you just do rarity order, with the one exception being that you should always kill the Narwhale. The Narwhale, I believe, is a rare that has like a special icon, so you're going to notice it pretty much immediately. But aside from that, you just do it in rarity order, going from Mythic, working your way down to the lowest possible rarities, with the exception being that Narwhale is your highest priority, and you should always take it every single time that you see it, due to it giving its special little horn thing that ends up doing a lot more points. As far as the restriction, it is a Blackhawk restriction, but we do have access to both skull damage and spell damage, so you can go either or depending on how you want to tackle it. The main options that you have for doing this pretty effectively, Bile Blackheart can be a pretty good tank if you end up needing something to tank. A low rarity tank can be something like Dragon Turtle. Obviously, you can always use Hero as your tank by setting it to a certain hero class. We have access to Kraken if you want to go down this route, which has a decent amount of damage while doing mana accumulation while occasionally getting Devour. Megavore can be a great option if you need some armor tier. Quite a few decent options. We have Scurvy Sea Dog, which is a good empower first turn mana accumulation option. If you want to go down the Skull route, you have Perpetual Bone Storm off of Skyla. Red Charlotte is surprisingly actually pretty good for this place. Once she has 36 gold, you end up gaining all your mana back every single time you cast her, so you can just keep casting her over and over again. And if you happen to have her or get her from event key drop tables this week, which is pretty likely given her lower rarity at the mid-tier round epic, you can just keep spamming her ability over and over again. And while 36 gold might seem like a lot, Scurvy Sea Dog might be able to do it in one cast. And even if it's not, between greed traits and other things, he's probably doing it in like one cast because the extra turns and everything on the board. You have Sacrax for mana accumulation, so quite a few options. Definitely not going to be like the easiest week for the event, but definitely along one of the easier ones. Oh yeah, and Captain Skullbeard for a bunch of explosion mana accumulation. Though in many instances, I don't know, you might end up doing Bio Blackheart. Really depends what you're trying to do on your team. Oddly enough, this might actually be more accessible because even though it's a legendary, it's a faction legend, so a little bit easier to get than necessarily having to go and get the other thing from event key drop table, though of course you can end up just getting it from event key drop table. Oh, and deck hand for a bunch of blue mana accumulation, so almost everything, honestly. It's somewhat decent this time around, oddly enough. And as far as weapons, I forgot to mention weapons. There are a few. Bronze Lock Pistol, if you can get the gold rolling, will end up doing a lot of mana accumulation through Destroy. However, the two most noteworthy ones, or three most noteworthy ones, are the 2 mana accumulation ones. Most likely the Pirate Signet, which does Blackhawk bonus, but you can also end up doing the inverse of it, which does it for Rogues. Though, given that Destruction is Blackhawk, you're most likely going to use Pirate's Signet. And aside from that, if you get 250 wins on the Blackhawk hero class of Corsair, you end up getting a weapon that does a bunch of damage based on gold boost ratio and is the best damage source that you'll have access to as a newer player if you don't have a lot of the higher rarity stuff and you don't want to use event keys this week. This is probably going to be your better option for damage output. And all you have to do is get 250 wins on Corsair hero class to end up doing so. Likely the hero class you would also be using for the event as well. Anyways, so as far as other things that we got going on this week, we have a few. Tuesday, we're going to be having the Blackheart faction event. Wednesday, we'll have the Blackhawk bonus pet, so that will help out with the event since you have to use a Blackhawk pure team anyways. Thursday, we have ourselves the Corsair hero class, which most noteworthy aspect about it is a rogue hero class, so it's occasionally used for that aspect, but it also has the benefit of having +3 blue, being one of only 2 hero classes that has a +3 into a color. It doesn't have a natural half mana start though, so you do have to end up using it with the Captain Macaw in order to end up giving it its mana. However, once you do end up having that, you can end up having it with a half mana start. However, there is one that naturally has a half mana start, which is the Archmagus, which gives +3 to purple, and naturally has its half mana start already. And this Friday, we were originally going to be having the Broken Spire faction event. However, they did end up changing it. So it does look like we're going to be having a raid event instead for Divinion Fields. Noteworthy thing about that, you can use Centurion, so that's going to be kind of funny to see how that pans out for that event. Anyways, as far as Soulforge, we have a few things going on. Honestly, quite a few good options here as well. Most noteworthy one is definitely the fact that Mother of Darkness is available. Not only this, but the thing that gives her a half mana start is also available since you can get that in event key drop table, meaning most of the what you really need to compose her this week is accessible. So if you've been wanting to go use the Mother of Darkness team, it is available. Actually, I didn't mention that in the teams. I guess I should move it up there though. But yeah, it's a pretty decent option. Not the best thing for PvP in the game, though it is one of my personal favorites to end up using, just because it's a lot of fun to use. So yeah, that's now accessible as of this week, and pretty much everything that you need for it, other than the rope darts, is all available. Aside from that, if you're looking for a little bit of a different mythic, Infernus is a pretty good early game mythic. He has fallen off over time as better burners and other things have come into the game, but he's still one of the more accessible burners earlier on in the game. Or not earlier on in the game, but as far as this week, if you can end up getting him. But basically, Infernus is a troop that he's a mythic that if you get him early, he's really good. He's a really good before you have Zugoff. He has a lot of things that synergize with himself. He's a really well-rounded mythic, among one of the most well-rounded as far as everything that he ends up doing for himself, between the mana accumulation, the split damage in a way that bypasses Submerge and Barrier for the most part, having a Storm that works into his coloration, having one of the better burns in the entire game. He has a lot of things going for him. The biggest issue is that he's spread out so thin that he doesn't excel at anything exceptionally well, making a lot of the newer mythics better than him in one particular aspect or another. And this ends up making it so he's good at a lot of things, but not the best at pretty much anything. And this makes him really good earlier in the game, or the earlier that you can end up getting him, because he's just good at everything. But you eventually will get options where one thing does something better than one of his aspects, and then another better than another. But overall, if you're like lacking a lot of mythics, he's still among one of the better first few mythics to end up getting. Probably not your first mythic that you would ever get, but definitely like first 5 priority or first 10 priority. It's still a really good one in the long term. Anyways, also King Averlon, while I generally don't advise getting legends, it is noteworthy to mention that he is a really relevant Guild War troop in that this is a Guild War week. Most noteworthy, he's used with Arachne Weaver for a pure elf team, or almost pure elf team. Normally it's ran with 1 in power, life and death, Arachne Weaver, and then King Averlon in some kind of composition. For the most part, you likely already have King Averlon if you have all those other aspects. However, if you happen to be missing King Averlon but have all those other things, he's pretty noteworthy. But yeah, Arachne Weaver Guild War team's very, very strong defend team. Not the strongest out there, but normally one of the 6 that you tend to set more often than not. Anyways, aside from that, as far as weapons, mostly a skip week for weapons unless you need them in order to get the kingdom to 20 star or 10 star or whatever objective you're trying to get it to. If you are going to craft something, the highest priorities are definitely the 2 high mana accumulation ones, the main 2 being Pirate's Signet and the weapon of, where'd the other one go? I was just mentioning earlier, the Captain's Colt Lass. The Pirate's Signet ends up doing it for Blackhawk, and the other one ends up doing it specifically for Rogue. So those are probably the 2 that you would end up getting if you're going to bother getting any at all. But for the most part, it's probably a week to skip unless you just need it for kingdom upgrading purposes or you're just getting them for completionist sake. Anyways, aside from that, let's go over all of the teams as there are quite a few to end up showing. And I might as well move one additional team up there as well, which is somewheres in here is my Night Spider team. Oh yeah, I can't reorder it here, can I? New plan, I shall go to troops and reorder it then. Somewheres here is the Rogue Spider, so I might as well mention that too. Pretty sure it's set correctly. Let's double check. Let's see, is that the one? Yeah, that's still the one. I wasn't sure if I switched out for the other thing. But there we go, and there's the Captain Macaw, the Mother of Darkness. So half the team's available this week. Night Spider's low enough rarity. The only thing that's not accessible is the Rope Dart then. Anyways, let's start going into the troops. So, or the teams, I mean. So as far as the World Event team, and the one I will likely be using, actually ends up going around Red Charlotte, oddly enough. It also ends up using Megavore. The other one uses much lower rarity stuff, but this uses the ring. Pirate Signet I was mentioning earlier. You're restricted Blackhawk, so you're going to have a pure Blackhawk team unless you change your hero class to something else. You can change it to something tankier if you want. However, doing it this way does do more mana accumulation. So this feeds a bunch of blue and red. The main gimmick with Red Charlotte, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but just to reiterate, she gains 2 mana back for every 3 gold that you have. So if you have 36 gold, she will gain all 12 of her mana back every single time you cast it. This basically leads to a situation where as long as you have 36 plus gold, she will gain all of her mana back every time you cast her. Even though she's meant to counter towers, you can just do this to infinitely keep casting her ability every single turn. And yeah, you just keep doing it over and over again once you have that much gold. So that's the main gimmick that you would be running with on this team. With Megavore, you actually want to cast it first. So basically the plan here is to cast Pirate Signet on first slot. You then ideally get enough mana accumulation that you end up doing the Megavore cast between the greed that you have on a couple of your troops as well as the greed on your hero and the extra 5 gold that you get per turn off the Corsair hero class. You ideally have enough gold that you'll have 36. You then just keep casting her until you win. Captain Macaw is just here to give half mana start to your weapon as well as to Red Charlotte, most notably to your weapon so that you can 1-turn it. It's also why we have a +2 brown, +1 purple. So if you surge on either of them, you will have full mana going into the following turn. And the reason you do double brown is just so it will leak into Red Charlotte ideally, and you'll be good to go. And you just kind of keep casting, and ideally you'll get Megavore in there too to kind of speed it up once you get to higher range. You probably won't need Megavore for the lower range, but for the higher range you will probably need it. As far as the cheaper team, you kind of already saw it earlier while we were on that one screen, but it ends up utilizing a bit of skull damage into casting, mostly casting. Main premise with this is you'd want to immediately cast Scurvy Sea Dog off of Empower. This feeds into your weapon. Also, everything here really low rarity. The Lil Johnny Bronze you get for free from completing out the Blackhawk Kingdom. Scurvy Sea Dog you can get in the event key drop table this week. It's just an epic. Plunder and Pearl you get from 250 wins on the Corsair hero class, which is also advised to use for this team. And Deckhand is just a rare that you should probably already have laying around, and if you don't, you would easily get it in just a few event key drops. But basically the premise here is immediately cast Scurvy Sea Dog off Empower. He converts into blue, so you'll hopefully have Plunder and Pearl. Excess blue goes into this to feed you even more blue by converting all purple into blue, which will ideally refeed right back into Plunder and Pearl, so you can recast Plunder and Pearl. You end up getting a bunch of gold off of Scurvy Sea Dog combined with the other gold that you have. You have a 25% extra off of Merchant here. You have Greed. Actually, I believe everything on this team has Greed. There's not a single trip on this team. Oh, never mind. He doesn't. My bad. So 3 out of 4 trips on here would have Greed. You also still would have the 5 gold per turn off of the hero class on top of 3 troops having greed, while also having a merchant. Main relevant thing about merchant, aside from the fact that you also get slightly more gold, is that higher gold rate will also make it so your Plunder and Pearl does more damage based on its boost ratio on gold. So that's pretty much the premise. You can cast Little Johnny Bronze if you want. Most likely you won't be casting him. However, the event does have extra damage to both skulls and spells. So you can try casting them, especially if you get like randomly a treasure map from a cascade. You can cast them for 8 or 12 skulls most likely, and then try going for a burst poke. For the most part, you will likely not cast him in most battles. He's kind of just there for the greed and the greedy, and he also has impervious, so you can kind of have some immune to status effects, but he's mostly just there to tank. Even though he's not really a proper tank, it's just a nice low rarity thing to kind of put in there. The main premise is Scurvy Sea Dog into Plunder and Pearl, with the rest just kind of being built around it based on what you have. Anyways, next team we have are all the stuff for faction. The faction is Blackheart. Heart. It is a blue-purple restriction as far as restriction. As far as what you can run for the entire thing, because it's blue-purple, you can end up just running standard Rowan. Just nice standard auto-win kind of run-through entire faction kind of team. With whatever hero class you want to level up or use for it. As far as going deeper, you can end up using just a pretty standard Hiking Iron Gut into Zugoff. Both are accessible. You can use that other Zugoff alternative that we end up having the other week as well if you don't have a Zugoff yet, and end up going down that route. And of course, you have access to Megavore as well, so you could end up going down the Megavore route if you wanted to get him, and kind of just mess around with that. Pure Faction's a bit of a weird one. You probably want to go either triple Deathblade into Bio Blackheart or just double, just to make sure if one Bio Blackheart dies, you still have a backup. Because as long as you have one Bio Blackheart and 2 Deathblades going into the final battle, you should be fine for the most part. Bio Blackheart is the main tank for this place. He also has a bunch of mana accumulation, so he explodes a bunch. Gauge a bunch of attack, a bunch of life, armor. Theoretically, you can win this entire faction with literally just one of him. The rest is just to make sure that you don't die, especially if you have lower stats, which is more so the reason for having 2 of them on your team. But he has a lot of things that you'd want from a faction tank. He has a score reduction, he has mana accumulation, he has attack gain and life gain and armor gain, and he even has a boost ratio based on how many enemies have already been killed during the battle. He also gets to convert some skulls into Doom Skulls, which allows his explosion to do more damage, and more notably allows Deathblade to hit insta-kill. It hits a 5% chance to insta-kill at base value, and it has additional 5% per Doom Skull on the board. Due to bad luck, you will likely not get a single insta-kill and maybe only one during the duration of the Pure Faction. However, you can still use his true damage to focus down, especially if you're running with potion effects. You're going to have quite a bit more true damage, and this would be enough in a few pokes to try to target down an enemy, and might even be worth going with 3 of him instead of double of the thing, just to focus down the true damage, because realistically you're almost never going to hit the insta-kill, maybe like 1-2 times during the full duration of the faction, most likely. So don't count on it to hit unless you just desperately need it due to having lower stats, in which case hopefully it'll hit every time. So as far as the Corsair class event, this is kind of one team that you can end up doing for it, either using Dawnbringer or the Frozen Orb. Gosh, why do I forget its name? Is this called Frozen Orb? The one that you get for 250 wins off of the Glacial Peaks hero class. You could end up doing that with Frost Mage. But any full AoE blue weapon would work here if you don't happen to have Dawnbringer. Otherwise, just use Dawnbringer. Scurvy Sea Dog kind of works kind of similar to that one team we kind of showed for the Delve event, or for the award event, I mean. Except this one is just focused on pure rogue for the Corsair class to get the class event done. And aside from that, we do have Divinion Fields raids this Friday. We do not have a faction event anymore, which is unfortunate. I was kind of looking forward to that faction. I believe it got delayed to the first week of next month, if I'm not mistaken. I forget the exact date. All I know is it's probably not this Friday. It seems like it got delayed, which kind of made sense because it looked like a few of the things weren't done yet, so it kind of made sense that it got slightly delayed. Some mechanic there was probably broken, like the new storm or something. I would not be surprised. But anyways, this might seem like a little bit of a block, but you do have ways to mana accumulate, like the Puka doing a bunch of red. You're also still doing the main premise as you would any raids, which is the only thing you're really looking to do is use your Mang, then use the raid troop to kill out the boss, and then just keep winning repetitively off of just taking skulls. This also ends up creating a bunch of yellow gems and purple gems, so you can end up getting a little bit of additional mana accumulation there to feed back into your other mana accumulation. Since the yellow feeds into Puka, the Puka ends up giving red, the red goes back into there, so you have a little bit of a kind of thing going. But similar to all raids, you're mostly just looking to mang the raid boss, hit the raid troop onto it, and the rest is kind of just here to be here. And of course, due to enchant potions, since you're most likely going to have at least tier 1, you will naturally be able to get Centurion up as well. So even though it seems like it's kind of blocked here, it's not really that blocked, and you'll still be able to use them to some degree. Not to mention the reds or browns that you end up getting will definitely leak, especially when you do a Puka cast. Those reds will definitely leak into Centurion, and then you do a bunch of mana accumulation off Centurion. Hope he gets a Devourer and kind of be good to go. And aside from that, here's the team I was mentioning earlier. Half this team is available this week. Mother of Darkness is in Soulforge. Captain Macaw is in the event key drop table. This is one of the better teams for using Captain Macaw as well, if you're looking for like ultra meta things to end up using. Night Spider is still as ridiculous as it has been since day one, which is fun. It is pretty much the only thing making rogues viable for the most part. There's a few other things in rogues that can kind of be okay, that are kind of gimmicky. But as far as like super viable things, like anything around Night Spider is pretty much the only way rogues are ever ran, and pretty much the only time you ever run rogues to begin with. Rope Dart can somewhat be replaced, but for the most part it is you can replace it out for a mana accumulation weapon, but just not the same because you're throwing out a lot of your damage output for a different option. But it is a little bit required, and the main thing that's not accessible this week, unfortunately. But if you happen to have it and you're missing the other components to it, it's available this week, so there's that. So definitely worth considering, as it is probably, honestly, one of the funnest teams, I would say, in the current state of the game for running PvP. I don't feel like it's really that useful for much else, though. But if you're looking for something fun to mess with PvP, it can be okay. Not the best team for it, but it has a really fun play style that if you haven't messed around with it yet. But anyways, guys, I believe that'll wrap it up for now. As per usual, we will be going over all of the campaign stuff tonight, as it is Chapter 2, and we'll be doing all of the normal Guild Wars things every single day, as we always do a PM Cisteran time here on the channel, as we do for the live stream every single night. If you guys still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Below will also be all of the teams mentioned in this video and description if you want to go and copy paste any of them for anything throughout the week. Anyways, guys, I'll catch you guys later. Hope you all have a wonderful week, and see you guys soon. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.